happy to present to you our short paper on assessment tools in the design studio. Let me please first share with you my screen. I will start with this slide quickly because it gives a background to the presentation, and we'll see here the traditional context of the design teaching in the design studio teaching. And here I will look at the general influences that happened in the last decade and and the new environment that's forming in view of these challenges. Design education, design studios generally centered around projects, and projects are described in generic terms and with minimal elaboration, and often borrowed from other offerings of the course or from other programs. And everything in the course is tied around the professor who's teaching the course. And even design juries, when you invite people to come from the industry, they only need to know about the level of the course and the building typology that they are examining, and they consider that sufficient for them to engage in the design jury. In other words, no reference or discussion or elaboration of the particularity of the curriculum or particularity of the course is taken into consideration when engaging in design. So this was the traditional context of design studio teaching. Now, with benchmarking and appreciation of international program-specific benchmarks and standards like CEDA for interior design or CACB for architecture in Canada, and the introduction of the program generic national education frameworks, which advocate comparability of academic qualification within a country or across countries, and the public awareness by the licensing bodies. All of these necessitated a new departure, a new environment departing from the previous mood, i.e. of generality and implicitness. We're taking the two concepts out of this new context, that's particularity and explicitness, for us to investigate in this short paper. These two concepts, of course, can be examined on different levels, on the level of the curriculum or the level of delivery or of the level of assessment. We selected the level of assessment and applied them to the design studio, since learning in the design studio is structured around a project, i.e. specific assessment tools anyway. Previous studies did not provide sufficient guidance to faculty in order to be able to develop and design a specific and unique assessment tools in view of the particularity of the course learning outcomes. All what they considered, they emphasized the composition of the design jury or the statistical analysis of the grading after the assessment has been made. So with this gap, we're trying to identify the characteristics of assessment tools that could support or hinder the intent of particularity and explicitness in the design studio. To achieve this, we need two stages or two steps. First, we will structure the components of the assessment tool as they appear in the design studio. And second, we will outline the general challenges that are associated with each of these components. Sorry, excuse me. So this is the sequence of the paper. We'll follow from identifying the components to the challenges, to identifying the sources of these challenges, to who is involved with these sources, what can be recommended for these challenges, and areas of further investigation. So for the first task is structuring the components of design for assessment tools. We identified 6 main components that comprise the assessment tool. And these are common to most of project briefs in the design studio. They start from the relevant course learning outcomes that are targeted for testing in this particular tool, leading to the specific interpretation of these learning outcomes in this particular tool, to the task that is selected for testing, to the submission requirements that are expected out of this task, to the process of achieving these requirements, and finally to the criteria of assessing achievements of these competencies, and a description of the highest and lowest expectation of achievement as a rubric. So in diagrammatic format, it will follow like this. For example, this is the relevant CLOs. They are often stated in general terms to allow for multiple testing. So this is the first point of departure. Second, we move to the possibilities of interpretation in different, we call them specific CLOs. And these are capturing different facets of the original CLO. It could be a partial segment of the CLO or a concrete case of the CLO, of the abstract content of the CLO, or a particular context associated with the CLO. And after the specific, we identify the task, and this is in design studios. It is identifying the parameters of the project, which are the tangible or intangible parameters. After the submission requirements, and often it is either design analysis requirements or design outcomes analysis, and these are the different types of it. Finally, and then the process of achieving these requirements, and finally the criteria and the rubrics. So for these 6 components, we will look at, or will outline the basic challenges that are associated with each of them. So it will go like this way. For example, for the first CLO, these are the challenges. For the specific interpretation, these are the challenges, and so on. And these are for the 6 components. I will select some, if you like. For example, for the first component, the main challenge is the generality of the CLO. If with general CLOs, all assessment tools can suffice. So there's no competency to be evaluated. And this is against the intent of transparency and particularity. For the specific CLOs, the main challenge here, we notice that the validity of the specific CLO, whether it is actually an interpretation of the original CLO, or it is interpreted to touch something other than the essence of the original CLO. Similarly, sometimes the specific CLOs are as abstract or as comprehensive as the original CLO. So we're reverting back to generality. Same, this is a challenging task here. The challenge here is how can you develop a relevant task relating to the CLO? And this requires high level of or capacity of research competency and conceptualization. When you go to the submission requirement, we notice often they are treated as a process rather than as an outcome. When we go to the process itself, the main challenge here is its relevance, whether there is a connection between the process and the specific CLO. Normally, we find the process that's stated is generic with tasks associated with the course, rather than with the specific assessment in that particular case. Finally, the criteria. This is the challenges that can be observed here. Sometimes they are not, so they are stated as referring to something else rather than a measure of appropriateness. For example, when we say in design, the form of the building, this is rather than which quality of the form that we are talking about. And other cases, if they are stated, they are often generic rather than specifically related to the CLOs. So in short, these are the many possible challenges that are associated with these 6 components. And if we look at them, so in this way, if we look at them, we see that all the components contain some challenges, i.e. the departure from the intent of particularity and explicitness could be evident in all of the components. If we look at detail, so the first component, the first component is the challenges are relating to the quality of the CLOs, while in the remaining components, the challenges are to the quality of those components. To move forward, so we have two types of challenges, those for the CLOs and those with the other components. Those with the CLOs are because the syllabus itself, so I'm talking now about the sources of these challenges. Here we see the syllabus itself is originally problematic. Nothing to do with the faculty teaching the course, nothing to do with the manager of the program. The curriculum itself was not written to satisfy this level of scrutiny that's needed within the new environment. When we look at the other challenges and the other components, we see two types. So the first one is that the faculty herself is not provided with the necessary time and resources and guidance to develop and design particular assessment tools. Or the faculty herself is not really equipped with the necessary non-subject specific competency that are needed as educators in relation to teaching technology, research competencies, capacity to abstract, and so on. So these two types of sources for the challenges in the 5 components, and this is the challenge for the source of the challenge and the first challenge. Of course, it will be clear here that the first one relates to the curriculum development stage. While the provision of resources to the faculty relate to the managing or the administration of the delivery. And the final one is the singular delivery. And the first one, now, the challenge here belongs to the curriculum committees. And the second one belongs to the program administrators or managers. And the last one is to the individual faculty. Our recommendations in this respect that for committees to refine and revisit course syllabi to provide a clear, concise, not overlapped, structured CLOs, and for administrators to allocate more time, more resources and guidance to faculty to be able to develop unique and explicit tools, and for faculty themselves to refine their own abstraction and research skills to be able to design and develop particular tools when they meet with the new course learning outcomes or the new interpretation of the same course learning outcomes in another assessment. So in short, the study, or actually it is not a study, it is a short study, a short paper, has comparatively exposed the challenges on the detail levels, has transferred the general phenomenon into a topic that can be investigated in objective terms further, and directed attention to actions on varied levels of responsibility. Areas of further research, I would say it will elaboration and verification of the said assertions could be the subject of areas of further research. And the final slide will refer back to the area slide and showing what was achieved in the what was needed to be achieved. Thank you very much indeed.